take your Bible and to turn to John. John chapter 1. And we're going to be looking at this passage over the next couple weeks. And so I have John 1 through 14 in your notes. We're not going to do all those verses today. Focusing on some of the first few verses here. And then verse 14. So I just wanted to begin the service in reading John chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, and then skipping down to verse 14. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. And then down to verse 14. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And Father, as we look at your word, as we ponder on what is very familiar, the story of your birth, your coming to us, give us that wonder as if we've never heard it before. I pray in your name. Amen. Amen. I look at this passage and I look at verse 5. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. And I know there's different translations there, and there's so many things that the darkness couldn't fight it back. They couldn't comprehend all these different things. But just taking that out of the New International, not understanding, because when Jesus came, they didn't get it. They didn't get him. And we've been going through First Corinthians, and one of the things that we've been looking at recently has been that the world and all its wisdom and all its power and all it couldn't get it without God helping them. And so I want to really start with a verse of Scripture that would continue where we are, but we'll look at this more in detail at the first of the year. But 1 Corinthians chapter 2. It says, we do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age, or the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. No, we speak of God's secret wisdom, a wisdom that has been hidden, and that before God destined for our glory before time began. It goes on and says, none of the rulers of this age understood it. For if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, as it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. Now, I love using that verse and talking about one day heaven, and that there's no way we can comprehend it. And you know what? It can apply to that because it's whatever God has to give us. But it applies to when Jesus came, that nobody could have conceived what happened. And everybody around, he came and they were in the dark. They could not understand. And thinking about Christmas time, and I've shared this as an illustration before. There used to be a show. I don't remember when it went off, and I wouldn't watch it all the time. Sometimes it was about businesses I could care less about, but it was called Undercover boss. Y'all remember that show, the basic concept of it, where a boss, would want to come into his company or her company and go incognito, go in disguise, go where they didn't know that he or she was the boss, And so they would take entry-level positions to go in, and the whole concept was the people supervising were then to report to the main office after so long if they thought this person was a good candidate for a job. And what was amazing to me when I would watch the show, and again, I know they probably had drama to it and stuff like that, but was how inept the bosses were at the everyday man's job. Where they couldn't, flip burgers fast enough or pack things quick enough or stuff like that, and they get yelled at and stuff like that. So it's just neat. But the point was he was going in to discover problems, to see what needed to be fixed in his company. He would go, and afterwards, when talking to these people who would come in to tell them how they liked or didn't like this employee, finding out that he was that employee and he was their boss. But there were so many things that in knowing them now on a personal level, he would do things to take care of them. He would pay for one of their kids' college. He would send them on a trip. He would do all these little gracious things to these people when he found out what their needs were. Now, for this to work, the boss had to come in a way that they wouldn't recognize him. Couldn't come in his suit. Couldn't come in all, probably didn't shave if he was a guy. But they changed his name. Now, again, watching the show, I can't help but God did this to this world. Now, he already knew the problems. He didn't come in to discover problems, but he knew the problem, and that's why he came to this world. But he came to fix the problem. And when he came in disguise. So I wanted to look at that. The divine. Jesus, one of the members of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, all separate yet one. Jesus didn't become God. He was always God the Son. It didn't begin on what we call Christmas night or whatever day of the year it was. But the passage we just looked at says this: Jesus is with God, literally face to face, but it also says, and he is God. How can you do both? I don't know how, but that's some of the mystery of the Trinity. Again, let's look at verses 1 and 2. In the beginning was the Word. Now, we find out later that what are we talking about? The Word, we're talking about Jesus. Just another name of calling him, saying he is the communication of God the Father. This is how it's getting out. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. So he's always been. And so he's divine. He is God. He is with God. And he created. He says he's been there from the beginning. Well, how do we know? Well, when you read in Genesis chapter 1, it says, in the beginning, God. In Hebrew, it's plural. And it didn't mean that there were a bunch of different gods in this pantheon or anything. It just meant there's God. And it gave the room to say, and he's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In fact, the Holy Spirit's even mentioned in the creation account. But so is Jesus. In John it says, through him all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. And the reason I'm going through this is a lot of times we go, oh, this cute little baby. And yeah, I'm sure, but when we think who he was before, and he became a baby, through him all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. He created everything. He sustains everything. In him was life, and that life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness could not comprehend it. It says in Colossians, again, Paul writing this, he's divine. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. And that's not talking about one time he wasn't and then he was born. No, that's just a phrase meaning he gets the rule over. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him. And it says that he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So he is the divine. As we think about Philippians 2, who? Jesus being in very nature God. Again, I'm not telling you anything you didn't know. He's always was. He always is God with God, and the divine came in disguise. The divine came in disguise. He wasn't recognizable. It says in verse 10 of John, he was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. Even Herod, he's trying to get rid of this threat. And he has no idea initially that it's a little baby. And then when he finds out, he goes after every baby because he wasn't recognizable. He came in disguise. He became human. Verse 14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us, tabernacled, set his tent up to live with us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. It says in Philippians 2, as we read it earlier, who became in very nature God, did not consider equality with something with God to be grasped, to be understood, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Now, I want you to think about this. How much lower are we than God? I mean, I've heard this illustration of the guy who's looking outside his window and he sees the birds and they're going to get cold. It's a super cold night, bad stormy. He wants to coax them to come in, and he'd open the garage door for them and they wouldn't go. They'd fly away and all this. And he says, if only I could become a bird, and tell them that it's okay to come in, and so that. But listen, it's a further drop. Because God is infinitely above us. And for him, even though he made us in his image, he is still so far above us. And he humbled himself. I will take on flesh. I will take the limitation of mankind. Did not consider something to be grasped. He made himself nothing. Literally is, he emptied himself. God is everywhere. Now he's in one place. God is in all time. Yet now he had a start. God was all powerful. And now he can't even walk until he gets strength and learns mobility. He emptied himself. He left the throne of heaven for the manger in the stable, a feeding trough, a place that if you had to clean it, you'd go, ew. And that's where God in flesh was laid to sleep. I'm sure Joseph cleaned it up as much as possible, but he left the presence of angels who were constantly worshiping him and the Father, the Spirit, to stay with a poor couple. He left his indescribable glory for a common appearance. This is part of the disguise. I've read this passage last week. He grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a shoot out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. And listen, when he was in the manger, he didn't glow. I know that's beautiful artistic renditions and stuff like that, but he didn't glow, and he didn't always wear a white thing and was a head taller than everybody else. I mean, the officials that wanted to get rid of him had to have one of those closest to him point him out because they couldn't point him out in a crowd. He left his position as king of all creation to the entry-level position of a baby. Why? Why the disguise? In fact, his disguise was so good that one of the disciples, after 3 years of being with Jesus, makes this request. He says, Lord, show us the Father, show us God, and that'll be enough for us. And Jesus answered, don't you know me? Don't you know me, Philip? Even after I've been among you such a long time, anyone who's seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? That's how good his disguise was. Even those closest to him didn't get it. But why the disguise? A couple things. If Jesus came as God, we'd fall over as dead. If Jesus just plopped down on earth and here's God, everybody around him. I mean, I love the passage in John where those come to arrest him, and Jesus said, whom do you seek? And they say, Jesus of Nazareth. He says, I am. And the Bible says, boom, they dropped. Now, again, that just shows you what Jesus could have done, because then they get back up and they say, he goes, who do you seek? And they say, we seek Jesus of Nazareth, and he says, I'm he. And I guess he didn't use his power then, but it just lets you know just a glimpse of what could happen when he revealed himself for who he really was at the Mount of Transfiguration. I mean, Peter, James, and John, they were just like terrified at heaven. He saw him in all of his glory. John, the beloved disciple who had laid his head on Jesus' breast at the Lord's Supper, sees Jesus in all of his glory. And it says, I fell over as dead. It wasn't until he came and touched me that I was able to get up. And so if God came as God, that we would just be blown away. He would not get close enough to us. Because to be close to God, as God warned Moses, to see me, you will die. And so if he came as God, we'd fall over dead. But what if he could? Okay, all right, I'm going to come as God, but just enough that they really know me. I mean, really, why instead of going through the whole thing of becoming a baby and growing up so I mean, it's 30 years before he starts his ministry. Why go through all of that when he could have just, boom, I'm now human, and I'm walking around and Why instead of dealing with Mary and Joseph and shepherds and wise men following one little star when he could have just arranged the stars to say, I am here, and ... point to wherever he was. I mean, why go through all of this stuff? Think about when you work or when you worked. Some in the room maybe are supervisors, or you own your own company, and there are some who work under those people, or worked. There's some retired. When your boss was in the room, how did you act? Did you work a little harder? Are those who are owners of the companies, or you're the boss, have you ever walked into the room and suddenly it seems like they start scurrying around to get busy? What if God stepped into the room? And he did it in such a way that we wouldn't be blown away by his glory. But if you knew God was watching you and was right here, and I'll add this, physically seen, how would you behave? I mean, you would. You'd be on your best behavior. You wouldn't let anything slip from your lips. You wouldn't speak ill of people. You wouldn't do any of these things. And so listen. If Jesus came as God, we would be on our best behavior. And guess what? Even that wouldn't be good enough. But he came to us so we could see our ugliness, our sinfulness. So why the disguise? Jesus wanted to meet us where we were so he can take us where we are to bring us to him. Why did he come at all? Jesus became human in order to deal with the human problem. Sin. Jesus knew that holy God and sinful man could not coexist. The gospel, the good news, is that God reached down into humanity and provided what we needed through his son Jesus. Jesus became human to pay as a human our penalty. And that's why he went to the cross. And so, sometimes we don't get it. They didn't get it back in that first century when Jesus came. We now have God's word to read, and we've had decades of reading and hearing the story and celebrating Christmas and all that, and we think we get it, but really, God, in all of his awesomeness, loved us so much, he sent his only Son to become one of us, to die as one of us, so that we, by trusting on him alone, could be with him forever and ever. Let me ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes. And Jesus, I pray as again we hear this story again every year. Again, give us the wonder that you didn't come in such a way that was unmistakable, God's on earth. But you came secretly, especially at first. But even when you shared who you were, they still didn't believe you. God, I thank you for opening my eyes, that I would see you for who you are and receive you. Father, I pray that all of our eyes, those who are here in this room as well as those watching online, that our eyes would be opened, one, to see we had a need that only Jesus can take care of. And he did at such a price. How you came to earth, how you humbled yourself, and humbled yourself not just by being human, but being obedient to die. And yes, even on a cross. So Jesus, help us to humble ourselves and see our need of you for salvation and for every day. I pray in your name. Amen. Amen. As always, following the service, if you would like to talk to me, I know we have a little meeting here, but I will talk to you before that meeting regarding your relationship with Christ. I'd love to talk with you about that. God bless.